The Broncos have made a splash in free agency, and we are here to talk about it on the DNVR Broncos podcast. Zac Stevens, Ryan Koenigsberg. We are going to be joined by Henry Chisholm as well, and the Broncos have made a massive splash in free agency, going after an all-pro safety. They signed Talanoa Hufanga to a 3-year, $45 million deal with $20 million guaranteed. Ryan, I can see you're chomping at the bit to talk about it.
I just want to say, Cowabunga!
We're all in for Hufanga.
Cowabunga, Hufanga, baby. We're all in. We're jumping off. This is really exciting. I mean, we talked about it a little bit earlier on the show today when it started to seem like this was a possibility. You're getting a guy who, to me, the first word that pops off is just a dog. He's an absolute dog. Was a monster at USC. One of those guys who, you know, if you just watch the tape, you'd say, okay, this guy is a first 2-round pick. Then, of course, went to the combine, didn't test well, and dropped all the way to the 5th round. And what happens when a guy like that falls to a really good team? He turns into a really, really good player, was an all-pro, and had some just eye-popping statistics during, you know, those 2 seasons where he was kind of rolling and he was really healthy. 4 interceptions, 97 tackles. And then he had 3 more interceptions in 2023, 10 games into the season before tearing that ACL. He's really, 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 really a fun player to watch. You're, you know, kind of that throwback classic safety that everyone falls in love with, although he's a little bit more modernized in that way. But to me, the biggest thing here is there's one thing I felt like the Broncos defense was lacking. It's edge. If not the actual position of edge, but just having an edge. And this guy plays with an edge, and I think can kind of help set the tone for the Broncos of being a more physical, imposing defense.
Henry, what are your thoughts on this big signing?
I love it. I love it so much. I want to go back and hear what I had to say about him on the Draft podcast and the Buffs podcast, because, I mean, he might have been my favorite player in that draft class. He was just electric. He was a playmaker. Like, no matter what you tried to do, he had an answer, whether it was covering, whether it was forcing fumbles, recovering fumbles, sacks, tackles for loss. Like, he is just ridiculously productive, but again, just physically not the most gifted player. I think you look back, 6 foot, 200 pounds. I think RAS score wise, that means like a 6 for his height, a 3 for his weight. I think he had like a 5 for his 40 time, and his 10-yard split was even worse. Like, the athletic testing, the size, like, it wasn't good enough for teams to give up a quality draft pick for him. So he slipped to the 5th round. But again, he got to the 49ers and he was just dominant. He could play the run. He could cover deep. He could cover tight ends. I've been shocked. So I spent the last hour just going back and watching that Jags game we were talking about when the 49ers played the Jags, with Dre Greenlaw, Evan Ingram, Talanoa Hufanga, the guys we're talking about. And I didn't give him enough credit for how good he is on the back end of that defense. Like, even when you want to play him in cover 3, that might be where he's at his best, because again, like, physically not the most imposing, but you let him get that head of steam moving forward and he'll just crack guys. Like, that's a hitter, that's a playmaker, and I am so hyped to see him as a Bronco.
Yeah, and I gotta say really quick, with it, his size, he's a normal safety size. It's not like he's undersized. Now, he might not be the biggest safety ever, but Justin Simmons, 6'2", 200. He's 6 foot, 200. You look at Kareem Jackson, 5'10", 190. You look at Brandon Jones, 5'10", 190. So, I mean, he is not like a tiny safety by any means at all, but he plays like he's 6'3", 225 pounds. He plays like he's Steve Atwater's size, and he can play anywhere on the field, and that's my biggest biggest takeaway about him. Not only is he an incredible player, but he is a guy, when he is on the field, he can do absolutely anything. Ryan, you kind of touched on a couple of the stats going back to the 2020 season when he was a Pro Bowler and a first-team All-Pro. That's right, first-team All-Pro, meaning he was one of the 2 best safeties in the entire NFL. Yeah, 2022. He had 4 interceptions. He had 9 passes defended, 2 forced fumbles, 2 sacks, 5 tackles for a loss, 3 quarterback hits. I mean, this is a guy that you can put him in any situation and he is going to succeed. I want to continue to break this down on this special show, but I got to give a shout out to someone that makes this show possible, and that is our friends over at Shady Rays. And over at Shady Rays, you can get 35% off your sunglasses when you use the code DNVR over at shadyrays.com. That's code DNVR over at shadyrays.com. Going to get you 35% off already affordable, incredible sunglasses. We want to give a shout out to them for making this emergency show possible. And Shady Rays has every single type of sunglasses that you could want, whether you're outside on the beach in California where some Broncos may be hanging out in the off season, or whether you're in the mountains hitting the slopes. They've got all of the sunglasses and eye protection that you need. All of their sunglasses are polarized. They've got hundreds of different options that you can go pick out over there. And if you use the code DNVR, they're already affordable. You're going to get it for 35% off of that. So make sure to check out Shady Rays. And hey, we say there's 300 days of sunshine in Colorado. Hufanga, you're going to need some Shady Rays for that. So use that code DNVR for 35% off over at shadyrays.com.
Also, shout out to our friends right there.
Yeah.
It's really weird to do that when it's inverted. Coors Light, man. I feel like if you're, at home today, maybe you have the day off from work, you're excited about this. You got to have a Coors Light. You got to have a Coors Light anytime it's time to chill. The best in the game, in my opinion, when it comes to light beer. It's so crisp, cold, and refreshing. And it's actually like full on Coors Light on a patio season today in Denver. I don't know if you guys have stepped outside since midday. It is unbelievable out. So celebrate a big move for the Broncos. Grab yourself a Coors Light and sip it on the patio. And if you're like, I don't really feel like going out to the liquor store, well, just go to CoorsLight.com/DNVR and you can have it delivered straight to your door. Shout out to our friends over at Coors Light.
So Ryan, one of the things that you said about him was, or actually we talked about him earlier today on our normal show because we knew the Broncos were close to signing him, but then they were close for a couple of hours. And you typically don't see that in free agency, especially right at the top, because this legal tampering period opened at 10 a.m. And we know that there's tampering from every single team before then anyway. So typically deals get done like that. But this lingered for a couple of hours before the news officially broke. And my understanding, they wanted to get this contract figured out exactly so it worked for both sides. And the interesting situation with Hufanga is he is an injury-prone guy. Like we said, the only time he's played all 17 games in the season was in 2022 when he was a first-team All-Pro. So one, that's exciting because you're like, if he stays healthy, he's going to be an All-Pro. Broncos just landed the best safety in the NFL, and they didn't pay him best safety price. So that's my understanding is they just want to make sure it was right for both sides. So he gets $15 million up to $15 million per season, which is key right there. So Broncos get a discount for him on top of another discount where if he's not able to play, it's probably not going to be that $15 million per year. And then Hufanga gets $20 million guaranteed at signing. So both sides kind of win with that deal. And for me, why I love this is the Broncos they know inside the building, this is a Super Bowl window right now. And sometimes you got to take gambles when you want to go win that Super Bowl, when you want to knock off the Kansas City Chiefs. And this is a gamble that I love because this is a guy that's going to take a top 3 defense and make him even better when he's healthy. And the downside is that he doesn't play and you have to play PJ Locke. And hey, PJ Locke is a fantastic backup safety that we know, but he is going to be next to Brandon Jones there. And I just love that the Broncos are going, I don't want to say all in because all in indicates like they're trading a first round pick for this guy. No, they're just paying him good money, really good money, but not even elite money. And this is when you do that. The Broncos are maximizing Bo Nix's rookie window right now. And I absolutely love that.
And as for the idea of like injury prone, he's only had one major injury, right? It was a torn ACL, but that cut into the next season. And then I think he had like a concussion that held him out a couple games and some wrist issue. But to me, it's like, okay, unfortunately, it's kind of hard to find a guy at this point who hasn't had one major injury in the NFL. So he's still really young. It's not as if he's done this multiple times. We'll knock on wood, but it's exciting to have a player like this. And here's my big take on it. If the stars align, and the stars aligning means people stay healthy, Riley Moss gets back to the pre-injury Riley Moss that we knew, and maybe even takes another step forward in front of that, the Broncos have the best secondary in the NFL.
Without a doubt.
And that is pretty unbelievable to think about. It's been obviously since the no-fly zone that I think you could say that about this team. But if the stars align for this team, the Broncos have the best secondary in the NFL to go along with all the other exciting things that they have going on. This is the beginning of a Super Bowl window.
And you're running it back with the best pass rush in the NFL. And by a wide margin, they had the most sacks last year. You pair those two things together, and all of a sudden, I mean, it's easy to dream on that. Going back to the injuries, I mean, part of it, I mean, concussion, that sort of stuff, like some of it is kind of play style. He's a very reckless player, plays moving forward a lot and kind of crashes into a bunch of guys. Honestly, a good comp for him is like PJ Locke, but just with a little bit more production. Like it's that very similar style of you want to line him up, you want to blitz him off the edge. He's like a havoc player. And that's what made PJ so exciting. And why he earned that starting job was because every time they put him on the field, including in that game against the 49ers a couple years ago, he was making big plays. And in that one, he forced the game-winning fumble at the end. I think Kareem Jackson recovered it. But it was kind of over and over and over again. The problem for PJ this year is that those plays just didn't really show up. It took like half of the season for him to make one of those splash plays. And I think that with Hufanga having, the questions coming back from the torn ACL, having PJ Locke as a backup for him makes a lot of sense. Like that's kind of a perfect fit right there. It's easy to see exactly what the role for Hufanga is. And then on top of that, with the fact that they might not get a top tier linebacker in this class, who knows, maybe they do land Dre Greenlaw. It means that you can cheat into those 3 safety looks more often. And it's something that it just gives you that versatility. Like we saw last year when they went with a 5-man front with just Alex Singleton behind it. It's a lot easier to get into that when you have those 3 safeties and get to cheat Talanoa Hufanga into the box a bit, cheat PJ Locke into the box a bit. And so while this is a demotion for PJ, there's still plenty of ways to use him. And I think that makes this deal really make a lot of sense, is that it just completes that whole secondary, even at cornerback, where you still have a couple questions about Jaquan McMillan, similar to PJ, very productive, havoc type player, didn't quite make as many of those plays as you hoped last year. If something goes wrong, all of a sudden you can slide Hufanga into the slot, Brandon Jones in the slot, and play that big nickel a little bit. So I think not only is he a really good player, the fit with the Broncos, I think is just perfect.
Well, and how about this? With when it comes to how much it's going to cost the Broncos, you imagine, we haven't seen the exact contract numbers come out, but it could cost them $6-7 million against the cap this season. If the Broncos wanted to, they could cut PJ Locke and save almost $4 million of cap space. So for this year, this move might end up costing the Broncos barely anything for such a big upgrade, because when healthy, you're getting one of the best safeties in the NFL. And really quick, speaking of the injuries, we touched on this earlier today, but there's probably no place that an injury prone, I'm going to put that in quotes, type of player would want to go than Denver, because the Broncos 2 years ago, before Sean Payton and Bo Lowry got here, they were one of the most injured teams in the NFL in terms of games missed. The 2 years that Sean Payton and Bo Lowry have been here, they've been the best in terms of not being injured. So that's a great selling point for Hufanga too. Like, hey man, you want to stay healthy? We know how to do it. We got the recipe here. So that's a positive way to look at it too. But also, I mean, there's facts backing that up there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I love this deal. I love him. I think he was my favorite player in the Pac-12 that last year. I'm so excited to go back and look for these clips, because I'm curious what I exactly had to say. Like, this guy's just an absolute monster and a playmaker. Again, I mean, similar to PJ Locke, as soon as those plays start drying up, all of a sudden, it's without the freaky athleticism, you wonder what it could look like. But I'm not too worried about that. He's just he's a dog. And to add that level of physicality, and the versatility to play deep, to line up in the slot, to cover tight ends and running backs. I'm only halfway through the first game of watching him, but I am thrilled that this happened, and I can't wait to. Well, I'm at the orthodontist. I can't wait to get done with the orthodontist and get home and just start watching Talanoa Hufanga all night.
Well, and speaking of being thrilled, I've got some insight into the Broncos building. But before that, I got to give a shout out to our friends over at it's a place that you can go if you want to bet on some futures with the Broncos. Bet365, where they have all the bets that you could want. They're all about being never ordinary. So if you want to get in on some maybe Hufanga Defensive Player of the Year, we know that Defensive Player of the Years can come from the Denver Broncos secondary, as Pat Surtain got that last year. You could probably bet on that in the coming days. Just download the app, scan the QR code that we've got on the screen right now, and you can actually place that bet with bonus bets or any bet, because when you sign up for Bet365, use that code DNVR365, deposit $10, place a $5 bet, and you're going to get $150 in bonus bets when you sign up, which you can use for tonight's Nuggets game. Those bonus bets hit right away. You could use it for the Avs. You could use it for Broncos futures. I know Sean Payton's thinking this is a Super Bowl window, so if you want to get in on those odds, you can do that over at Bet365, plus anything else over at Bet365. And you use that code DNVR365. And of course, you must be 21 and older, physically located in Colorado. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, once help, caller text 1-800-GAMBLER. Terms and conditions apply.
Also, shout out to our friends over at Toyota. They got Zach to the studio today, got him home, got me here. I haven't gone home yet. Won't be going home for a while. But when I go home, it'll be in my Toyota. Can't say enough things about Toyota. I love the features. I love the reliability. To this day, my Toyota has never had to be brought into the shop, and I won't even touch wood on that because I'm that confident in my Toyota. It's just an unbelievable car. And as someone who's had, some other brands of car before I got this Toyota, I'll never go back. I'll never go back to any of those other brands, man. They're the absolute best. So if you are looking for a Toyota yourself, make sure you go and visit your Front Range Toyota stores at a location near you. Check out all of the new models they have. There's a ton of great ones. Zach and I have been going back and forth between the 4Runner and the Land Cruiser, but you can't go wrong with either one. So shout out to our friends over at Toyota.
So, guys, really quick, we only got a few minutes left before Ryan's jumping on buffs, before Henry's getting an orthodontist checkup. But I want to bring you guys inside the Broncos building. Checked in with many people inside the building since this signing has happened, and they're just thrilled. They didn't fully expect him to be on their radar just because of how good he is and how many teams they thought that would have him. But let's take you back 2 years ago when Sean Payton got here. There was Kareem Jackson and Justin Simmons, a very loved safety duo by the Broncos country and by the building, by everyone, not by Sean Payton. That just wasn't the guys that he wanted. So what does he do? He gets rid of both of them after his first season here. Obviously, last year takes a dead cap. It takes a big cap hit because to free up some cap space, but that was because that just wasn't Sean Payton's guy. Didn't like how it was done. So we brought Brandon Jones in, who has a phenomenal year. People viewed him as a backup on free agency. The Broncos bring him in, make him a starter. He has a fantastic year. Now Hufanga rounds this group out. Now you're going to see what a Sean Payton safety group looks like with Brandon Jones, with Hufanga. It's versatility, but it's also physicality. You guys mentioned that dog mentality. The Broncos have that now here. And talking to a couple of players, they absolutely, on the defensive side specifically, they absolutely love this move, as we are. Like that, there's the only downside is the injury history. There's no other downside to this move. Guys, he's 25 years old. He just turned 25 too. This entire next season, he's going to be 25 years old. There's a chance we're talking in 3 years that he's re-signing with the Broncos on a 4-year deal. So he is young. He's got so much left in the tank. And one more final thing from me before I hand it off to you guys really quick is the 49ers community talked about how much their play dropped off when he was out. And that says everything you need to know about a player, specifically at that safety position. When you have him, they were elite. When you didn't have him, it really dropped off. And look, this is a 49ers defense that has that had Dre Greenlaw, that has Nick Bosa, that has Fred Warner, that has so many superstars. And he was one of the biggest key pieces of them playing well or not playing well.
Absolutely. And I have two last things, because there's one word that we haven't said about him that I think really pops off when you watch him, and it's instinct. There are certain guys who you can go all the way back to their high school tape, and any way you watch them, they're finding a way to be around the ball. They diagnose plays quickly. They make plays on the football field that you don't see other guys making, because they just have a certain feel for the game. A lot of times you get that mostly, you can get it anywhere on the field, but a lot of times you talk about it with an inside linebacker. And he kind of plays with the mind of an inside linebacker, I think, who just happens to be a lot quicker and can, cover and do those things that he does at safety so well. But his instincts hop off the page. And then the other thing is, people forget how transformational he was for that Niners defense when he kind of came in and was just a revelation for them. But I'd love to go find this. Like, there was like a Sunday Night Football game right in the middle of his breakout, and they did an entire just like package highlighting how he's just changed everything for that Niners defense. And they were rolling before he got that injury. And so if he gets back to those pre-injury levels, this is going to be really, really fun. And I bet you that you're going to see a lot of Hufanga jerseys in the stadium at Mile High.
100%. Like, he immediately becomes one of the most fun players on the team. Emphasis on the fun in Hufanga. But I'm curious how quickly he gets up those charts and gets into like the top 5, the top 3, because that's just the kind of player he is. And I'm curious what you guys think, whether taking a guy with this injury history, do you think that scares the Broncos away from Dre Greenlaw? Because signing 2 guys who've been hurt, and even Evan Ingram as well, I mean, that's a risky strategy.
Look, I think to not dodge that question, but I think the Broncos were ready to make one big splash come to free agency with the defensive side of the ball. And with how many teams are in on Dre Greenlaw, I would probably say right now it's not going to happen, but it's not fully out of the cards for the Broncos perspective. But I would say that this is the splash that they're going to make. $15 million. I mean, it's not top of the line safety money, but it's still a lot to spend. So my guess is DJ Jones, Hufanga, they feel really good about where their defense is at. So I'd say this is the direction that they chose to go instead of Greenlaw.
What else is coming today, Zach?
Watching Dre Greenlaw a little bit was not super impressed. Again, I'm through half of one game. But don't ask him to cover Christian Kirk is what I saw.
Well, yeah, that's very fair. And what else is to come today? Evan Ingram. This is news. When you host a guy for a visit, you're not going to get news right away. And so we didn't get news this morning, but you could get news later today. So keep an eye on Evan Ingram. We'll be going live if news happens with Evan Ingram again. So make sure to stay tuned to us on YouTube. Tune in. We've got so many people watching, literally thousands of people watching right now. We appreciate you. Hit us with a thumbs up. It helps us. And we got one super chat to hit from Matt Dean, who says, happy you guys got your wish from earlier. Any inside scoop updates on Greenlaw or Evan Ingram, Zach? Yep, we just hit it right there. Stay tuned for Ingram. I'd be more surprised if Greenlaw signs than Ingram and get Sean Payton his joker. So we'll be back to break it down. If news happens today, stay tuned. And if not, we'll be back at 11 a.m. tomorrow on the DNVR Broncos podcast. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.
We all silly like the mayor.